Thank you very much. I'm going to talk about a great mystery, and I have little time. Science, our universe is full with mysteries, and the greatest mystery is the mystery with which we are studying all these mysteries. And science is doing a very good job in resolving all these mysteries, save that mystery which I'm talking about. We are humans, we have mind. This mind is associated with consciousness. Consciousness is somehow associated with something we call the brain. And here is the trouble. The more science understands, deciphers, studies the brain, the greater the mystery which is known ever since the Greeks, the mystery of consciousness, the mind-body problem, the psychophysical problem, and so on. What's your mind-body problem anyway? In science, we take qualities and turn them into quantities. Say, if red differs from blue, you can show that it is quantitatively different. It's a different wavelength of the electromagnetic radiation. If sweet is qualitatively different from salty, once again, you can show a great scientist, British, Lord Rutherford, said that the qualitative is a poor replacement for the quantitative. Science wants to know quantities. Tell me what's the size of the molecule, what is its spatial arrangement, and so on. This is all from mathematics. Love is qualitatively different from hate, but it is also quantitatively. These are different neurons arranged elsewhere, but it's neurons. In science, as Rutherford said, the qualitative is a poor form of the quantitative. And this is the strength of science, and this is where science utterly fails when it deals with this mystery of consciousness. I'm going to take this guy Leibniz, who was a great philosopher, and a great philosopher and scientist and mathematician and politician and everything. And there was another great polymath here in this country who hated his guts. And the reason why we don't know much about this Leibniz is that Newton persecuted him all his life. And when he died, Newton said, good, I made his life shorter. So, but here is a case. Here is a case in which a philosopher, and this place is a meeting between philosophers and scientists. Here is a case where I, as a physicist, have to concede that the philosopher has given us a challenge that we failed to pass to this day. And here is what Leibniz says. Leibniz already knew that consciousness is somehow associated with our brain. Physicians knew it ever since Middle Ages. So here is my brain, and it's this size. Said Leibniz, what if my brain was as large as a windmill? Then I could go into it. And then I could see what happens in that person's brain when he is having this a certain kind of experience. Say she is happy. I know better than that person what happens in her brain when she is happy. What do I know about happiness itself? Nothing. Amazing. I can predict by being within her brain, and I can predict what she is going to do. She is going to cry, she is going to laugh, and so on. I know better than her what happens in her brain. This is as far as the process is concerned. I don't know what's happening in my brain if I didn't learn neurophysiology. What does this tell us about the experience? Once again, zero. Let me make it even clearer. Of course, we can mock a philosopher of the 18th century by saying, come on, the brain is not as simple as a windmill with all these ridiculous wheels and so on. We have neurons and axons and synapses and so on. It doesn't matter. Here is a case in which the genius of the philosopher goes and puts a challenge which scientists cannot stand up today. And let me make it as simple as possible. My friend and I are going in a field, and we see flowers. And I say to my friend, look, what a beautiful red, and what a beautiful blue. And she agrees, yeah, this is red, this is blue. And then we can talk in different languages, Hebrew, Russian, whatever, Chinese. And I'm satisfied that indeed she refers, forget about color blindness and so on, that she refers to the same colors as I do. Let's suppose further that we are both neurophysiologists living at the end of this century, if there is still humanity at that time, if we don't destroy ourselves. So each of us is a great neurophysiologist, and we are equipped with the machinery that is needed, which Leibniz envisaged, to seeing what happens in each other's brain at the same time. You know what? Let's make us even identical twins. So we were born with the same genes and having through the same experience and so on. I know better than she, or if I am a she, or we are both. I know better than she what happens in her brain when she sees red and blue. She knows better than me about the other case. What about the possibility that actually when she sees red, her experience is blue? The process is the same. Certain electromagnetic radiation comes into the retina, goes to V4, V5, I don't know, and then comes through the Broca area to the mouth. This is red. I know everything about the process, red and blue. What do I know about the experience, the subjective experience? Nothing. Nothing in the world, no language, no experiment can rule out the possibility that she sees the colors inverted. I'm talking about colors, I can talk about tones, about different tastes and so on. It's the same. And things are even worse. I can't be sure. Yeah, I just can imagine that ever since she was a child, or even since I was a baby, my mother said, look, what a nice red strawberry, and look at the flag of Israel, what a beautiful blue. And I keep talking this, and I believe that this is red and blue. And once again, the more you learn neurophysiology, the more you learn about vision, the more you learn chemistry, biochemistry, physics, particle physics, whatever, nothing can advance you concerning this question. So here's the problem. Science can tell us everything that we want. It depends how much you want to know about the process. But the subjective experience which accompanies it has nothing to do with it. And the problem is even worse. I can't be sure that she sees any colors at all. She perceives them. Yes, she can perceive them better than me. My cellular phone can perceive colors better than me and define them and give them different names, even different hues and subhues. Does my cellular phone has any subjective experience? So what's the difference? Say there is air condition here, and the air condition is sensitive to the temperature, even more than I am. It can just adjust the temperature here, or whatever. We have now instruments which are much more sensitive than we, concerning color, sound, everything other. But then they don't need any conscious experience in order to do that. I know about myself. We believe we have conscious experience. Each of us is sure that they have conscious experience, and we assume that the other has also. But science cannot give us any certainty about that, because if you are talking about a mechanism, nothing can help you that. And let me give you a few examples. I'm a physicist, so here are billiard balls, and I'm analyzing their behavior. So all I need to calculate it is the laws of mechanics. There is no place for the experience of the balls, say, feeling pain and then repelling from one another. This is absolute nonsense. But it is not only that I don't need it for the calculation. If I take it into account, I'll get a wrong answer. The physical world is completely full. Energy, momentum, matter, there are conservation laws. There is no room for anything like that. It's only the laws of mechanics. I come home and I see that one of my pots, the plant is almost dry, and I say, oh my goodness, it needs to have water. So I water it, and then I can see the turgor pressure within the leaves, and I say, it was 30. No, it was not. And this is all just physics, not different than the billiard balls, just much, much more complicated. So there are laws, and people here who know some physiology know what happens. There is water outside, there is water with saline or sugar inside, and there is osmosis and so on. We don't have to go into the details. Once again, I don't have the precise calculation of like the billiard balls, but if I have a computer strong enough which computes it, then of course I can't put into it anything like the thirst of the plant, because I will get a wrong result. Less water, more water. Our world is very tight. And when I go to the doctor and he just examines my patellar reflex, that's the same thing. My consciousness is not needed for that. Although I am conscious of being hit by the hammer and replying with a kick. Now you know what goes at the end of this scale. Here is Romeo singing love songs to Juliet. And what science tells you is that if conservation laws are correct, and if psychology is reducible to biology, which people believe it is, and biology is reducible to chemistry and physics, then it's just the same. The fact that Romeo has the conscious experience of loving Juliet has nothing to do with what he and she are doing. According to another great British giant, Charles Darwin, and the evolutionary theory, actually what we do has been shaped by evolution, procreation, and so on. We would do exactly the same thing had there been no consciousness in our mind, just brains. I know it sounds really strange, but here it is. Machines, computers, do what we do, and sometimes even better than us in some functions which are called mental, and they keep advancing. We don't have to assume that there is anything conscious there, that there is any subjective experience of red and blue. There doesn't have to be anything like that, only the process. So here is the problem. The laws of mechanics completely explain the motions of billiard ball, plants, and even us. Just to make my point clear from another perspective, when I was in the bathroom, I washed my hands with some detergent, with soap. So I say that the detergent molecule is hydrophobic in that it is repelled of water. Now, come on, there is no real phobia there. There is no fear. It's just electric interactions. Now here, this unicellular creature is photophobic, right? If I shed light on it, it swims away. I don't need any fear. I don't need to invoke any fear. Just you have these flagella. When light hits them, they move, and then you get the net motion away from light. What about this guy? Now, he or she, it, I don't know, shows some fear from me. I can say that there is no real fear there. This is only just the mechanism. But you understand, I think it was Bertrand Russell who said, a person who was not a communist in his youth has no heart. A person who has not ceased to be a communist has no brain. So here I either have no heart or have no brain, because I don't know where to go to the extremities. If I say that this lobster, which is going to pinch me, is not afraid of me, and it is only the sum of its reflexes, what about this case? Here is a human. Between it, there is my cat, the chicken in my garden. Where along evolution do I talk about consciousness and rather than physical events? This may happen to you if you don't have too many cockroaches at your home. If you have too many, then it won't happen to you. If you don't have, it won't happen either. But if you have a few cockroaches every few weeks, you may understand what happened to me one day. I saw a cockroach in my saloon. I didn't like the idea, so I went to this cockroach to do what humans usually do to cockroaches with whom they don't want to share their home. That cockroach didn't really like my plans about his or her future, and it climbed on a chair. Of course, I was not going to give up, so I picked up the chair, looked, it was not there. I turned it around, it was not there. Come on, it was there a minute ago, so perhaps it went to the other side. I turned it around, I didn't see it, and then I turned it around carefully and slowly, and then I saw the cockroach carefully and slowly moving to the other side. Now you can imagine how silly I felt at that time, and a person standing there with that creature on the chair, and I'm thinking, does she have real fear, or is it only reflexes? If I say that it has fear, I can go to the detergent molecule or to that unicellular organism. If I say that there is no fear, what would I say about a human? I didn't solve the problem at that evening. I just walked out, placed the chair, and say, do me a favor, go away. But the mystery is still there. So philosophers have invoked all kinds of isms in order to explain it. I'll review them very briefly. So we all know physicalism. There were some eminent British philosophers who argued this way. there is no consciousness. It's some illusion. You think that there is something unique to it because it's very complex, but actually what you have in the universe is only physical laws, matter, energy, and that's it, with relativity, quantum mechanics, but there is nothing other than the material world. This is what our forefathers believed in, our ancestors. There is dualism. There is matter, there is mind, something comes from God. We have a soul which goes into the matter, and this is the source of the mystery. Now, the worst case here is interactionist dualism, which all philosophers, and especially physicists like me, abhor, which say that there is actually something non-physical which interferes in what we do. This is what religion believes. This is what, I mean, even the person in the street believes, that there is something which is distinct from the body which interferes with it. From the physical viewpoint, it is an anathema, because that means that conservation laws are somehow wrong. Think again, and you can pause for a minute to think about it. Think again about the billiard balls. The billiard balls, if anything interferes with their motions, you will get a different result in the lab, and we never get it. What's the difference between billiard balls and brains? As far as we know, it's just the matter of complexity. But it's the same laws. They can be, even when quantum mechanics comes into the picture, they can be turned into something statistical, but conservation laws are always obeyed. So this is what most physicists fear most, interactionist dualism. The majority of philosophers, and the most genius among them, tried all kinds of non-interactionist dualism. They didn't want to be as silly. How is Oscar? Can I see him for a minute? My dear Oscar, how are you? Here you see the pristine consciousness of somebody with the greatest mystery. And as we say in Hebrew, Yevarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Have a happy New Year. Bye-bye. There is a mystery there, okay? And it's great. So non-interactionist dualism, this is what people like Bertrand Russell and others believed. There is another aspect of matter which is distinct from the matter, but it's just the same. You can ignore it because there is nothing which is immaterial which goes and interferes with what we are doing. So let me give you a few examples, and you can't help admiring the genius of these people. I'm coming back to Leibniz, epiphenomenalism. In German, it's called Städtentheorie, the theory of the shadow. And it goes something like this. I'm walking, and my shadow is walking next to me. Whatever I do, my shadow is doing. Who is affecting whom? Or in order to use Leibniz's example, there are two clocks, one big, one large, and they show exactly the same hour. So I may think that it's one clock which affects the other, or the other which affects the first. And we understand that it's wrong. One watchmaker just made the two clocks, and from now on they are in parallel. So suppose Oscar is thirsty, and he cries, and daddy gives him something to drink. So there are two clocks going on here. The physiological one, which is the process of being thirsty, kidneys, throat, and so on, and brain, and so on. And the mental one, being thirsty, having the experience of drinking something, being happy, and so on. Leibniz said we have two parallel worlds. We just have the illusion that they affect one another. And of course, he was a deist. He believed in God. So for him, it was not a problem. I think that it's genius, but it doesn't help us. It doesn't help us much. No, actually, sorry, I was confusing. This is parallelism. Matter and mind run parallel to one another. So this is Leibniz. Others proposed epiphenomenalism that said only one thing affects the other. Somehow my brain gives rise to my consciousness, but my consciousness never interferes with my brain. Okay? So sorry for the the confusion. Parallelism says that there are two worlds which do not interact with one another. Epiphenomenalism says there are two worlds. One of them affects the other without somehow violating the conservation laws, but the other is not affecting the first, and this is how we have this mystery. There is something mysterious, but we don't have to fear for conservation laws, and we don't have to worry about physics. And then there is identity theory, which actually is so dumb that I have no time. They say that they are the same, sorry for saying that, but they say that they are the same, but we think they are different. It should be come back to physicalism, but they admit that there are two sides of it. And yeah, and there is one which I like. I don't have much time to it, and it says something very radical. It says, here is your problem. You have studied physics, chemistry, biology, and neurophysiology. You went up at the scale of complexity, and then you came to the brain, and you say, there is something mysterious there. There is consciousness, and I can't understand how the working of the brain, with the more and more details that I work and understand the brain, I still can't understand why there are conscious experiences. Perhaps you neglected something from the very beginning. Perhaps there is something in matter itself, in any grain of sand, in any rock, in any drop of water, in any molecule, in any particle, that there is something mysterious that you don't understand, and then when they become very complex, they give rise to consciousness. Here is your mystery. I admit that I like this one. But here is now my question, and here I come to what I believe to be my original contribution to the debate. I didn't solve the problem. I believe I made it much worse. So here it is. All of them are non-interactionist dualism. Common to all of them is the consciousness in essentialism postulate. Okay? For every action which looks like a consequence of a quail. Yeah, I forgot to say what a quail is. Red, the subjective experience of red, is a quail. So science is talking about quanta. In consciousness has to do with qualia, the quality of red versus blue versus yellow, or the quality of sweet versus salty, and so on, which are distinct from the structure, from the process of seeing red or tasting it. So the problem is with qualia, and here goes the postulate. For every action which looks like the consequence of some quail, there is a neurophysiological explanation which ignores qualia altogether. So I still say that Romeo kisses Juliet because he loves her. Actually, it is a shorter way to say that Romeo kisses Juliet due to very ancient instincts and having to do with his education and so on, which is a consequence of earlier physical causes. So this is what is common to all these theories, which I think are ingenious, but it kills actually what is the most essential part in our lives, and this is the qualia, the subjective experience. Many years ago, and here is the penalty, there was this great man, René Descartes, who actually went as far as to admit interactionist dualism. He was a great mathematician, physicist, philosopher, and then he said the following. At his time, just like Leibniz, he saw robots. In King Louis' court, there were a few robots, very primitive, but he understood that in time there will be robots who would just do what human beings are doing. And he studied physiology. He dissected many brains, and he came to the conclusion that animals are indeed machines. Humans are not. He saw something in the human brain in his dissections, which he failed to see in animals, and this is the pituitary gland, and he said, this is what is unique to humans. Consciousness comes from above and interferes only with us, humans, in order to, and this is what makes us so unique. There's been a Jewish philosopher, Shlomo Maimon, who was the student of Kant, and in a very revealing autobiography, he said how, as a young person, he was so much influenced by Descartes that one day when he walked with some of his friends, they saw a goat at the side of the road, and he kicked the goat. And his friend said, Shlomo, why do you do that? It's cruel. He said, it doesn't feel any pain. And then they said, but it cries. He said, if you hit a drum, then it also makes a sound. It doesn't mean that it feels pain. So this is how really bad we can get when we do not ascribe consciousness to others. I think it was the British neurophysiologist Sherrington who said Descartes would never utter this nonsense had he owned some pet. And I think that you can understand that. I mean, you understand, we ascribe to them, we somehow feel, although we have no proof, just as I have no proof that you have consciousness, that you have qualia, we have a feeling. Darwin, by the way, also had it, you know, that once when he saw a wasp being eaten by a spider, he wrote in his diary, I released it. Come on, you're Darwin, you shouldn't do that. But he felt pity on that spider, so he released it. So here's the penalty when you want to be a dualist, and then, of course, you have a problem with physics because you claim you actually end up saying that conservation laws are incorrect. This is something that you don't want to do, not even in relativity theory, quantum mechanics, and so on. So here's the question with zombies. I mean, in the philosophical literature, people are talking about the zombie. It's not the zombie that you see in horror movies. It's the philosophical zombie. So they behave just like us. We assume that by the laws of physics, this is possible. But they have no qualia at all. So if she is hungry, if this guy is erotically aroused, if this mother loves her child, if this guy is running out of panic, the claim is that they would do exactly the same thing had they lacked consciousness. Here is a great philosopher of our time, David Dennett, who says, what about zombies? We are all zombies. I think that it's a silly comment, but made by one of the great philosophers of our time. This is how, to what absurdities you go when you try to ignore a problem just because you have no solution for it, then you pretend that it does not exist. What day? So some 30 years ago, I wrote a paper in which I said, there is one behavior, one human behavior, that you cannot account for by saying that consciousness does not interfere in what we are doing. What is this behavior? So you can look at these. One of these, eating, loving, being in fear. What is the kind of behavior that you cannot explain without assuming that consciousness interferes in our actions, in our brain, and in our actions? What are we doing now? Here is a physical system, matter, energy, talks a lot. I came all the way from Israel to here, and people actually paid nicely for my travel fee. These are physical phenomena happening because I am troubled by the problem of consciousness. Why am I troubled by the problem of consciousness? I argued in a paper some 30 years ago that this is a case in which there is a proof. I can explain it only by assuming that there is something non-material called consciousness which interferes in what we are doing. There is a great philosopher of mine, David Chalmers. We are about the same age. I hate him, I love him, I decide to this day. And he wrote this beautiful book while we were doing, he in philosophy and me in physics. And he wrote this book, which I recommend to all of you in Oxford University Press, The Conscious Mind. And then he quoted me. And he said, Elitzur argues directly from the existence of claims. But then what he said is that he's going too far. Come on, I made an argument. I'd like to, in this book, to show what's wrong in my argument. Actually, what I said here is the confession of a reluctant dualist. I'm a physicist. I was doing my PhD. I didn't want to have troubles with my dear advisor at that time by assuming that conservation laws are incorrect. I said, can you give me a counterexample? And he didn't. So here is what Chalmers is saying. I have consciousness. I wrote a book about consciousness. Please understand how absurd it is. I would write exactly the same book have I lacked consciousness altogether. This is written in one of the most best-selling philosophy books of our time. And then some years later, I came and offered the following asymmetry proof. I said, here is Chalmers, and he says he's an epiphenomenalist. And he says that has there been a zombie named Chalmers, he would write exactly the same book. So here is, I consider the possibility. A presumably conscious human, let's call him, this is Chalmers, states that there is difference between his P and his Q, physics and qualia. He further argues that the duplicate for him, I propose to call him charmless. And that charmless is conceivable. which is similar to him in all aspects, save one which has only P without Q. And then Chalmers asserts that by physical law, charmless must notice a difference between his qualia and brain processes, but he doesn't have qualia. And then he would write just the same book. And then I said, but then Chalmers can argue that this difference produced in charmless create the same behavioral consequences as his difference. Now ask Chalmers, can you conceive of a charmless who is identical to you but lacks Q? His answer by one, this is the logical proof, mind you, is yes. Now go to charmless and ask him, can you think about a zombie that has the same problem about their P and Q? And his answer by 3 must be no. There are no unmediated percepts, regardless of what is known to them. This is something unique, and this I argue, that when you go to all the other possibilities, say a rat running from a fox, 2 birds making love, and so on, although I can't prove that there is something non-physical interfering in what they are doing, just by taking this extreme example, I can now go back to Darwinism and say, although this is a great physical mystery, but from the viewpoint of evolution, I can understand it. If there is something non-physical, I don't call it soul. There was a great British Australian neurophysiologist, a Nobel laureate, Sir John Eccles, who actually wrote a book, and with quantum mechanics, he tried to show that actually there is a soul coming from God into our neurons. I believe that he did not succeed in that. But here is a question, and this is what I am asking. I say that by this example, that actually there is Chalmers, but no charmless, and therefore charmless would not conceive of harmless, which would then conceive of some armless, and so on and so on. I published this asymmetry proof, and which I believe is logical. There are few ways, if you are in the academia, which you can make your colleague miserable. You can say that they don't understand anything. People say that. You can say that they are charlatan. People did that to me. There is a paper in Journal of Theoretical Biology, which compared me to Humpty Dumpty and Pooh Bah and all that. Everything is fine. But here is what Chalmers is doing. He ignores me. Absolutely. I mean, there is no answer to this day from Chalmers. So where are the cameras? David, will you please? I mean, people are waiting for your answer. Why do you keep ignoring me? I think that this is what, from the evolutionary point of view, we would say that if somehow along the 4 billion years of evolution, biology, I mean life, this amazing thing called life, think about it. Life, if you study it as a physicist, you see that there are many disciplines of physics which life has learned billions of years before human beings learned them. Life knows chemistry. Every tree out there can do photosynthesis, which no chemist today can still do. We are still studying it. But life means chemistry, means mechanics, means optics, acoustics, hydrodynamics, and so on and so on. Is it possible that life was earlier than science to somehow get in touch with some mysterious quality of matter, of energy, of the universe? If you think that this sounds mystical or religious, so be it, I don't care. I'm coming from the viewpoint of a scientist, and I argue that my logical proof is completely tight about the asymmetry between P and Q, which I gave there in an almost mathematical form. This is my argument. To this man with whom I did my PhD, Yakir Aharonov, I owe the inspiration for this. Yakir is one of the pioneers of quantum mechanics. He is the discoverer of the Aharonov bomb effect. And he argued the following: there is something strange about time that we don't understand. And here it is. In classical physics, when I do something, it has consequences. I throw a rock on some glass, the glass is being broken, so there is cause and there is effect. You will never see things going in reverse. That is, some glass being broken and then a rock being thrown into it. In quantum mechanics, Aharonov has proved that, and we have some papers with him published 4 years ago in Nature Scientific Reports. You can show that when you are making a measurement, then this measurement affects not only the particle's future states, but also its past states. So there is something very unique about time that we don't understand there. Can that tell us something about some attribute of ours, like free choice? Aharonov is a strong believer that despite the laws of physics, even of quantum mechanics, we are free to choose, we are free to make decisions, to make free choices. Can it explain consciousness? I can also mention Sir Roger Penrose, who was very kind in his books to give tribute to the Elitzur-Weidmann bomb testing experiment, and he entertains a similar idea, that there is something in physics that we don't understand yet, that quantum mechanics gives you some hints, and this may explain phenomena like creativity, music, and so on and so on. These are all speculations, and this is what said this physiologist, Émile de Bouet-Rimond, when he gave a talk. He said about the problem of consciousness, ignoramus et ignorabimus. We do not know and will not know. And David Hilbert, the mathematician, gave his answer. We must know, we will know. This is what I believe. Thank you very much.